Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. Ever since Brook Lopez signed with Milwaukee 3 seasons ago, he has been a staple in Coach Mike Budenholzer's starting lineup and the most important player on what has been a top 10 defense in each of those 3 seasons. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down everything Brook Lopez from this past year and evaluating just how effective he was this season. We will start with the strong suits of Lopez's game, the most significant of which is certainly his rim protection. Statistically, last year was actually the worst shot blocking season of Lopez's Bucks tenure, as his 4.8% block rate wasn't quite up to snuff with the seasons prior, in which he made all defense second team. However, Lopez's block rate still ranked in the upper echelon of rim protectors league-wide, and he was very effective whenever the Bucks were playing in the drop coverage scheme that allows him to protect the basket at such a high level. The reason why Lopez's block rate actually went down this season was not because of a decline in performance. It was actually because the Bucks switched up their defensive scheme a little bit and asked Lopez to switch out onto the perimeter more than he had in any other season throughout the course of his career. Lopez wasn't quite so good at this, but he still was impactful as a rim protector when the Bucks did play that drop coverage, and I would certainly say that it's the area in which he's the most positively impactful for the Bucks. Lopez was also very effective inside the paint on the other end of the court. He converted a career-high 77.4% of his shots at the rim and did so on a considerably high volume as well. He took a higher proportion of shots at the basket than he had in any other season during his Bucks tenure. The largest reason for this was that Milwaukee used him more as the roll man than they had in any other year. Lopez took advantage of this in a big way, catching pocket passes and lobs alike and converting them at the high rate that I mentioned before. He established a very solid pick and roll chemistry with both Chris Middleton and Jrue Holiday, and this became a pet play for the Bucks, especially whenever Giannis Antetokounmpo was out of the game. After Giannis got injured in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Lopez had his biggest game of the postseason in Game 5, as he posted a 33 efficient outing for Milwaukee that led them to a pretty big victory over Atlanta. The fact that Lopez was used more frequently as a rim runner meant that he spent less time out on the perimeter as a floor spacer. That's not to say that he still didn't get up his fair share of three-pointers though. The 5.3 shots from beyond the arc that Lopez took per 36 minutes ranked as among the most among players who play primarily at the center position. Brook still got up plenty of shots from beyond the arc, and that's a big reason why defenses are forced to respect him so much from three-point land. He's actually not that great of a shooter, which seems to be what his reputation is. Lopez made just 33.8% of his shots from beyond the arc, which is significantly less than league average. However, since Lopez is such a willing three-point shooter, teams are still forced to respect him, and that makes him a really viable spacing option for the Bucks, creating plenty of room for Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton to operate. Lopez also has a lot of gravity as a vertical floor spacer. He's great at catching those lob passes that I mentioned before, and the fact that his man can't help off of him for fear that he'll be there to catch a lob for an easy bucket, he's still effective as a floor spacer even when playing out of the dunker spot rather than standing on the perimeter. Before we get into Brook Lopez's weaknesses, I think that there's something really important that must be understood about his game. Brook is nearly perfect at playing his role during the regular season. That role is a low-usage big man whose primary jobs are to protect the basket, box people out, and make wide-open shots when asked to. Unfortunately, the value of that archetype of player simply declines in the postseason. NBA teams in recent years have decided that they want to have their 5 most skilled players on the court at all times. That has led to a downsizing league-wide. We now see players like Nicola Batum and Blake Griffin playing center rather than traditional big men like Brook Lopez or DeAndre Jordan. And that simply means that because Lopez doesn't have the versatility to guard on the perimeter, he can't stay on the court in playoff situations in the same way that he brings value to the Bucks in the regular season. Don't get me wrong, he's still a valuable playoff player. He just can't necessarily be a part of the closing lineup in each and every series because he lacks the versatility to still bring value. That has been on display in this past season. The Bucks asked Lopez to do a lot more switching on the perimeter, and oftentimes it was exposed that that's just not something that he's able to do at such a high level. The game where this really stood out to me came against the Houston Rockets late in the year. The Bucks were playing against a Rockets team that was pretty bad. I think Houston finished with the worst record in the league, and they really struggled to put together any sort of coherent winning style basketball throughout the course of the season. Against the Bucks, Milwaukee tried a switching scheme over the course of the entire game, and Kevin Porter Jr., a talented but still young and developing player on the Rockets, absolutely destroyed Brook Lopez on those switches. Porter used his advantage in terms of speed to constantly create plenty of space playing against Brook, particularly on step-back jumpers. Porter ended up dropping 50 points in this game, and a big reason for that was that Lopez just wasn't equipped to guard him on the perimeter, and that was exactly what the Bucks were asking of him. This defensive versatility that Brook lacks is his biggest weakness, and it's what prevents him from being a super valuable player in the playoffs, just like he is in the regular season. The one other flaw of Brook's game that I can think of is that he's not a very good passer. Some big men in today's NBA are still able to be super valuable to their teams in the playoffs because they're good enough on offense to make up for not being able to keep up on defense. Lopez is someone who has the size and talent to be able to do that. The one reason why he can't be a reliable post-up player is because he's very poor at passing out of double teams. Lopez posted a minuscule 3.5% assist rate in the regular season last year, and that actually went down in the playoffs. Lopez really struggles to see open teammates, and so that means that whenever he's trying to post up a smaller player, someone like Bruce Brown in the series against the Brooklyn Nets, the opponent is not afraid to bring a second defender and double team him because they know that Lopez can't beat them with his playmaking. If Brook could develop a little bit as a passer, it could make post-ups a bit more of a viable offensive option for him, but since he doesn't really have that as part of his game at this point, he's not someone who's going to be able to beat defenses because they're playing small. Overall, Lopez is such a valuable regular season player, but his weaknesses are really exposed in the playoffs, and he loses a lot of value at that point. Unfortunately, I think that this was pretty clearly the worst of Brook Lopez's 3 seasons with the Bucks. He wasn't able to make as large of an impact on defense, and he wasn't much of a game changer on offense either. That wasn't really because of anything that Brook did wrong, though. The Bucks just did a whole lot more experimentation than they had at any other point during his time with the team, and that led to Brook being put into a lot of spots where he just wasn't very comfortable. When Brook was allowed to play in situations where he was in his comfort zone, he was still a very reliable player, especially in the regular season where he made a huge impact for the Bucks and was a big reason they were still able to hang on to the 3 seed despite all of that experimentation. All of this made Lopez's season extremely hard to evaluate, and out of all the guys that I gave a grade to so far this offseason, he was definitely the hardest. Eventually, I settled on giving Lopez a grade of a B+ for this past season. This came after much deliberation though, and I could really understand giving Lopez a grade anywhere between an A or a B. Finally, we'll wrap this up by discussing what comes next for Brook Lopez. Lopez signed a 4-year deal prior to the 2019-20 season that still has 2 years and $27.2 million remaining on it. I think that Lopez will most likely play out the rest of this contract with the Bucks, but there is certainly a small chance that he will be traded. Lopez is the only player on the Bucks who is slated to make between $6 and $29 million for next season. That type of mid-tier contract is usually the easiest to trade in a big deal, so I could see the Bucks packaging Lopez with either a young player or some draft capital in a move to upgrade their roster. However, I think that this is pretty unlikely since Lopez is still an above average player at his position, and the Bucks should probably be keeping that type of guy long term as they attempt to keep their championship window open for as long as possible. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope that you all greatly enjoyed it, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. Also, let me know in the comment section down below what your favorite Brook Lopez moment was from this past season. For me, it's pretty clearly that 33-point outing against the Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals. That big night for Brook was a big reason why the Bucks were able to win that series, and it's definitely my best memory of him from that year. I think that I've now covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.